I would also like to introduce Barkley. Barkley is one of the kind of names when it comes to the ADHD diagnosis. And in this study from 1999, an old study actually, already 24 years ago, but in the publishment of this study, Paulito, he says that these data represent the first formal operationalization of Barkley's theoretical model of ADHD. And Barkley was the first to propose that ADHD involves a loss of behavioral inhibition, self-control, which leads to disruption in 4 executive functions. And Barkley says, common to these executive functions is planning. Speaking about what and whatever they call it, that's not so important actually, but it is what goes on in this part of our brain. This is the director, the captain of what everything we do. And the symptoms that Barkley lists are like these: reduced control of behavior, bad planning, little expectations. And note that because when you know how to plan, you know also something about what you can expect. And your expectation, what you would like to achieve in your life. When it comes to choose of occupation, what do I want to become in the work life, and so on. So your planning processes has got to do with this type of thinking and planning, also for the future of your life. And it's easy to relate the next step to emotions, because if you have plans and if you have future expectations, that most often, I would say, would activate positive emotions. And also Brown speaks a lot about how emotional functioning is part of it when you have an ADHD. Lack of organizing, difficulties with verbal problem solving, and speaking to oneself. That's something we do, isn't it? Sometimes we need to speak to ourselves, and sometimes we find it very useful to speak to ourselves, reminding ourselves about what is good in our life when we feel bad for something. And in these days, with a lot of war going on in the world, with a lot of frustration of how humans can behave as assistants. We are not going to speak a lot about that, but we need to speak to ourselves sometimes, also in such situations, not to lose all our expectations and our belief in the future, actually, and the future of our kids. We need to speak to ourselves to release energy to do something with the situation.
Du har holdt på en time, 5 minutters pause.
Yeah. There is actually in 10 minutes, no? Let me see. Maybe 5 minutes now. Yeah, maybe 5 minutes now before we take, yeah, that's a good idea. So let's change our body positions and do some movements and maybe a cup of coffee and so on. And speak a little bit more about this, the cognitive part of the diagnosis, so to say. And in a minute or in some minutes, I will also ask you to discuss a little bit in groups. That will also give you the possibility to use your own language for a while. Glasses. Here we are. Lack of organizing was also some of the things that Barclay listed. We have spoken about both what Barclay and Brown says about this diagnosis, because they are they have done research and a lot of work, and they have spoken also all over the world about these things, and they are listened to. Impaired use of rules in self-control. Maybe not because they don't know the rules, but because, as also Brown put very clear, it is a brain problem. And with problems with developing, using, and control organized strategies. So that's a point where we should go in then and give resources, give support. But there are other possible reasons for difficulty with the executive functions. They can be influenced by other things than those that require a diagnosis, actually. Could be care problems related to parents and other responsible persons and significant persons in the child's life. Could be bullying. Could be teacher problems. And that's why sometimes in one classroom, a child with this type of problems can function quite well. In another classroom, not. So actually, I think I will do like this, so that I'm sure that my earrings, suddenly that occurred to me. I don't know where that type of behavior is in this thematic that we speak about today, but to make sure that doesn't influence the sound. Traumatic experiences could also cause this type of problems. And of course, all these have in common that they influence the emotions. So the emotional part is also very important. And there, of course, can be biological or organic or genetic problems that maybe could be more, when it comes to the different hormones, at least, it could be maybe more possible to regulate permanently than with the typical ADHD medication. So it is about, can we help ADHD children? And that will be actually the focus in the next part of our webinar today. And can we help ADHD children? How can we help, actually? Should we maybe rather put the question? From what we have focused on now, it is reasonable to say that education must take the students' cognitive difficulties with planning and executive functions into account. And what does that mean? What does that mean about the classroom? Actually, I can use examples from Norway. And I think maybe Norway has been one of the countries in front of taking away the strict rules in the classroom. And don't misunderstand me. Of course, there are rules in the classroom also in Norway. But for the last 2-3 decades, there have been impact on the students' activity in the classroom, and also the students' own kind of independent work. Let me describe a typical classroom 15 years ago in the first and second grade. At least 2 days a week would be with station works, as they called it, with different stations in the classroom with different activities, and the children working in groups, not necessarily working together, but in groups, because they were working with the same activity at the same time. So for like 12 minutes, maybe less, they would be in one post and doing the tasks described at the post. And then they would switch to another post and doing another activity. And also the reading, the approach of the teaching reading would also give the children the possibility to be very independent and to work on different stages, because some learn very quickly to read, some others do not. So they need different literature to read, and they need to work on different parts of the reading learning, and the activities helpful in that. But what happens in such classroom is it's very good for those children who are independent and who can organize themselves and who understand to go from one post to another and easily are in the activity that they are supposed to on each post. But children with ADHD, they could very easily be lost in a classroom like that, and they have been. Because they have to start from zero on every new station, and again kind of put all their attention to a new task. And when they have got there, there's just a few minutes before they need to move to another. And when there is kind of you are yourself responsible of cracking the code of reading, for example, that doesn't happen. Even if the resources in the classroom are a lot and they are good, but the child really cannot manage to organize herself to take advantage of it. So a child with this type of problems will need a lot of support in the classroom, and that needs to be recognized when we choose to organize our classrooms in that way. The socio-emotional difficulties related to ADHD may prevent effects of cognitive intervention. And then we don't speak about the classroom that I just referred to, but also to more deliberate intervention created for helping children with ADHD. So we may not reach them even with the best methods. But it could also happen that cognitive intervention will be helpful and also reduce the socio-emotional difficulties. And when we work with these kids, it's important to realize the kind of connection between the executive functions and the emotions. I'm not going to say more about that now, but just think of it. check out with your experiences whether it makes sense. So another side of this coin is also the next point, to give the student hope for the future, visions and goals. And with these kids, we cannot put the responsibility for that on themselves. We, as a system, and as a teacher or an assistant or another adult close to the kids, we have to take responsibility for that. And we are going to speak about ways of doing that. And I'm sure you all have a lot of ways of doing that, because the way we relate to children, not just teaching them or supporting them in special activities and things like that, that like we do in a school and kindergarten setting, but all the other things that we do. And that's important to make the life easier, and also to support them in ways that they more likely will succeed in their learning and their achievements. And also metacognitive support for planning. Those kids who are in a kindergarten that has a plan for the day, and I'm sure you also have these in some kindergartens and in some schools, maybe all, this kind of planning of the day with symbols telling about the different activities. That has been very popular in kindergartens in our country. And when I speak about these things to kindergarten teachers, I often mention that. And sometimes they respond in ways like, okay, yes, but actually we don't use those that much anymore. They are on the wall, yes, but we don't relate to them during the day. But that's a point to do, because if we have a plan for the day, let it be in the kindergarten, let it be in the school, or let it be at home as well, or in another setting where kids are together. So let's have a plan for what we are going to do, and let's make that plan visible and hearable, put into language for the children. Because that puts or gives them the idea that planning is something. And it will give them the experience of what planning is about, to decide what we're going to do, and then to do it, one thing after the other, and then have it completed. And with all the good emotions that comes together with having completed something. I don't know whether it makes sense. Shout out if not. Don't let me speak if it doesn't make sense. Okay, actually, we are so far now, as my plan was that we should come before we have a longer break at 3:15. So let's now start these suggestions for intervention. And we are going to speak a little bit more about environment and structures in the classroom, and planning facilitation, and also an attention curriculum, kind of. And attention and planning, maybe I should have written a curriculum. So let's focus on this for a little while. What kind of tasks is it that needs planning? How can we strengthen planning? And how can we get around planning? And are you keen for a little a chat in, or real talk in discussion groups? Does that sound okay? Please protest if not. What I do then is to divide the participants in 2 groups and ask you to speak together with this. You need to accept to go into the, or maybe we are so few now, we can just have 1 group. Maybe that's better. Because 7 and Morten and I am here, then you are 5. That's a little bit too little to divide in groups. So let me hear. First, what kind of tasks is it that needs planning? Anyone who would like to say something about that? And just unmute and come on.
Hi. I think homeworks need planning.
Homework needs planning.
Homeworks,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just needed to check that I heard correctly. Homework needs planning.
Homework.
Yes.
Well, I would say all activities need planning because you have to get them ready for the task. So you need to let them know what is ahead of them and how can they achieve the goal. So you need to plan how to introduce the activity, what to tell them, what to show them, how to make sure they understand the task, and so on. Actually, I can't imagine any activity that doesn't require planning.
And then you speak about planning on the teacher. The teacher will have to plan. And I totally agree with you, of course. But let's also think about what kind of tasks is it that requires planning, that the child plans or the student plans, not only children, but the person who is going to do something. Any other comments? When is it that the child needs to plan? Maybe we could say that when there is a novel task, when there is something, actually that the task doesn't have to be novel, but on the opposite, when there is some routines. There is a task for which it's totally clear for the children, okay, then they have to do this and this and this. Then there's not need, then there is already a plan kind of embedded. But when the task is novel, it requires that you find out what to do, how to do it, what resources you need, and so on and so on and so on. And that are the situations also in the classroom in which the kid really, which is challenging for these kids with ADHD. When if they are going to work on this sheet of math tasks and they know perfectly well what to do, it's much easier to get it done than if there is a lot of word problems, for example. So they need to find out what kind of calculation type do I have to use to find the answer of this. Then it's much more challenging and you need a plan in another way. So novel tasks need planning. Routine tasks, they're the routine kind of directs the work. And that could be an important awareness with the teacher. So all these tasks that I give the people, the students, I mean the pupils, just are ready-made for them to do it. That's easier for a child with ADHD. While a task that require that they organize themselves, they organize their stuff, they organize the materials they're going to use and so on, that's much more demanding. But then how can we strengthen planning? And Sylvia, I would say to make the plan that I have as a teacher visible for the kids is one way of strengthening planning. So to put it on the blackboard or whatever ways we communicate with the kids, but to really make our plans visible and clear for the kids is one way of strengthening the planning also with them, because they become aware that planning is something. But now I've referred to both Brown and Barkley, who speaks about planning as a problem when it comes to ADHD. And it is a problem. It is a continuous problem for them. So this is something we need to be aware of all the time in our work. We are never finished with that. So how can we kind of get around planning? How can we easing the burden of planning, so to say, for the students' work? Let's look a little bit at that. Well, to organize the classroom, everything has a place, and I would think most classrooms are organized. And the different things has a place in the class. At least in the teacher's mind. But maybe not always this is outspoken for the kids. And that's important for these kids, that they know also about the organization. And so we know that when a kid with ADHD and this type of behavior is going to go from his or her desk and to the shelf where their books are, for example, then there are a number of possibilities on those meters of distance to get distracted and suddenly find them doing something else. So it's not as easy as that will solve the problem, to organize the classroom and to make it clear for everybody where everything has its place. It's also necessary to organize activities and the procedures. And maybe let's go to the next point immediately, to automatize sub-skills. Because everything that is automatized is ready for activation without planning. Our brain is constructed like that. So once a kid has learned the addition table, like between 1 and 10, I don't know how normal that is in Czech to automatize all the different combinations between 1 and 10. We speak about tens friends. And in that expression lies all these number combination that becomes 10, like 8 and 2, 7 and 3, and so on and so on. And that's relevant, of course, but it's also relevant to automatize all combinations that can be 7, that can be 9, that can be 11, that can be 15, because then the demand on the executive functions, whenever you calculate, is much less. That's what we're going to speak more about tomorrow. And also for reading, when sub-skills are automatized, then the demand for the planning processes are much less. And of course, that's nothing new in that, to work on automatizing speech, sound, letter combinations. Actually, that's how we work, isn't it? And also, I don't know how it is in Czech, if you also work on combined phonics, combined speech sounds. And I guess you must have a lot of them with all your consonant combinations in the language. Is that something that is worked on, to automatize all these combinations of consonants that make a speech sound together? Please tell me. That's interesting in this setting. This is something they work a lot on in US. And when it comes to reading, in around year 2000, 2002, 2004, they had a big study in US. And that was maybe still after the shock that they were not on the top on all these international research about achievement in kids and adolescents. I don't know, but at least they had a very, very big study. What is it that gives fluent reading, and that supports and provides fluent reading?
Yeah, I can tell you something about practicing consonants combinations. In year 1, the children are taught one sound after another in different combinations with vowels.
Mm-hmm.
And they spent, as far as I know, because I am not a primary teacher, they spent a whole year making that syllabic system, or working on the syllabic system in the Czech language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the only practice I know about.
Yeah, that's interesting. And in particular, but then does that also include when there is a combination of consonant, or is it just the one consonant with the vowel?
They start with one consonant with one vowel.
Yeah.
Because the Czech language is a system, is phonetic language.
Yeah.
So what you hear, you pronounce.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the words are divided into syllables quite regularly. So it means one consonant, one vowel.
Yeah.
In many words. But of course, not all of them. There are complicated words, but the children don't meet them in year 1.
Okay.
And by the time they meet them, they are already able to read whatever they can see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the colleagues agree with me. Maybe there is someone who teaches in a primary level.
Let's hear.
Probably not.
So thank you very much. It's very interesting to know. Actually, to work with syllables is also, yeah, let's hear.
Hello, Gunvor.
Hello.
I am teaching at special school, children with special needs and mental handicap. I teach a different type of, sorry for my English.
No, that's good.
Type that described Ms. Doláková, or my colleague Doláková, but it's mostly used, what she described. I teach so-called splývavé čtení. Do you know?
Yes, fluent reading.
Fluent reading.
Yeah.
Which has different postup, different
procedure.
Procedure, yes, different procedure. I teach first consonant and syllables, one at a time.
Mhm.
The O, S, B, U, A. This is the first step. And then I teach S, L, M, and the vowels together. S, A, S, U, S, E, and so on. L, A, L, E, L, O, M, A, M, E, M, O. And then when they finish this step, they can go to the 3 syllables concept. So it's different than the, different.
Yeah. But in both these ways and in other ways as well, it is just about this to automatize parts of the words and not only the whole words. Yeah. So and this actually, I think, and we could discuss the different approaches to do it. That's not that objective for today, but it's important to just be aware what happens, because when all these elements are automatized, then we kind of ease the burden of reading the whole word, and of course, more important, the longer the words. But there is also an progression in that from shorter to longer words, of course. So all this is things that is important for children with ADHD and with these problems with making plans and drawing conclusions as well, because that's also drawing more deliberate conclusions is difficult.
I find this fluent teaching, speaking very good for children with ADHD, because the child at the beginning stays for a long time at one syllable. For example, O for O, yes? And then when he comes to 2-syllable word, he says, for example, so he has a long period of time to read the 1 syllable and to connect it with the second. I find it very helpful. Even my children with quite a big mental handicap are able to read now 3-syllable words perfectly.
Yeah, great. Thank you, both of you. It's very this is a very important part, I think, when I speak with the Norwegian culture in my head. And some things are similar and some things are different. And thank you very much, because you make it so much more relevant when we also can connect it to how you do these things in Czech. Okay, now time is 15:15 almost. So that's when I put in half an hour, because we need a real coffee break and brain break. That's important when we work in the way we do today. So I hope you will be back at 3:45, 15:45, to see more what we can do to help with automatizing. When is that a possibility, and when do we need to do other things, and what other things? That would be the objective for the rest of the afternoon. Okay, have a nice coffee break.